The gaze that sees the invisible something changes when the veil falls. It is not a mystical vision, nor an escape from reality. It is the opposite, a complete immersion into what has always been here. Spiritually awakened people do not search for new landscapes. They simply look at the same horizon differently. For them, the world is no longer a collection of separate forms, but a vibrating field of consciousness. As Jacobo Grinbeg taught, reality is a living network, and to perceive is to touch that web with the eyes of the mind. They do not see things, they perceive connections. And within that silent entanglement, they discover that nothing was ever a part of the crack in reality. It always begins with a fracture, subtle crack in the surface of what we call normal. Sometimes it comes quietly in the middle of a long breath, in a heartbreak, in the pause between one thought and another. It feels like a disturbance, a glitch in the rhythm of existence, but it's not destruction. It's revelation. Reality trembles for a second. Time loses its structure, and the self, that familiar voice that narrates our days, begins to fade. There is no thunder, no spectacle, just a widening silence that swallows the old sense of me. Jacobo Grinbeg described this as the expansion of perception. A moment when the brain stops filtering the infinite and the infinite begins to seep through. We realize that what we called world was only a translation, a simplified version of an ungraspable totality. The awakening does not add something new to existence. It removes the barriers that made us believe we were separate from it. It's calm, and suddenly, everything becomes transparent. The walls between things dissolve. The tree, the air, the sound of footsteps, all merge into a single pulsating fabric of awareness. It's not a hallucination, it's an unveiling. You begin to feel the space between things as alive, intelligent, and aware. It looks at you as you look at it. Perception turns circular, the observer and the observed reflecting one another endlessly. At first, the mind resists. It wants to return to its old logic, to hold on to the familiar sense of being someone looking at something. But once the crack opens, you can't unsee it. The illusion of separateness weakens. The story of me becomes porous, and through those openings, light enters. Not the light of the sun, but the inner luminosity of being itself. Awakening is not a triumph. It is a surrender. It is the gentle fall of everything that was never truly you. The spiritually awakened do not stand above the world. They dissolve into it. They don't look for meaning in form. They perceive meaning in formlessness, and through that formlessness, they touch what Grinbeg called the lattice of consciousness, the silent architecture beneath all perception. In that space, perception is no longer personal. It is universal awareness, looking through countless eyes, feeling through countless hearts. And when you rest there, even for a moment, you understand the crack in reality was never a break. It was the beginning of truth revealing itself. The dissolution of the self. After the crack comes the quiet undoing. The walls begin to melt, not dramatically, but with the softness of dawn light seeping through the dark. It doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in whispers. The eye that once felt solid begins to loosen, like sand slipping between fingers. And you realize, almost tenderly, that you were never holding anything real. Only shadows of identity, rehearsed expressions of selfhood. There is fear in this stage. The mind trembles as it senses its own impermanence. It fights, it clings, it repeats old names just to remember who it thinks it is. But every time it tries to reassert control, the silence answers back, vast, unshakable, infinite. And in that silence, something ancient begins to breathe. Grinbeg spoke of consciousness as a lattice, a woven field of reality itself. The self, he said, is not the source. It's a temporary knot within the fabric. When awakening deepens, that knot begins to untie. You don't disappear. You expand. You become less someone and more everything. The air inside your lungs feels like the same breath that moves the trees. The rhythm of your heart synchronizes with the pulse of existence. What you once called your life becomes just one note in an infinite melody. It's disorienting at first. You look at your hands and they no longer feel like yours. You listen to your thoughts and realize they were never truly spoken by you. They arise, they vanish, they echo through consciousness like waves across a vast sea. The self was never the ocean, only the pattern of the waves, pretending to be separate. And yet, within this dissolution, something profound appears. Compassion. When there is no longer a hard boundary between you and the world, everything becomes intimate. The pain of another is not distant. The joy of a stranger feels like your own heartbeat. You begin to perceive through unity, not through separation. You start to feel what Grinbeg meant when he said that perception is not passive, it is creative. We don't see the world, we generate it together through consciousness itself. In that understanding, life stops being a sequence of events and becomes a field of experience, fluid, infinite, eternal. The self that once observed the world now dissolves into it, like salt disappearing into the sea. And there, in that stillness, the awakened one begins to truly perceive, not from the mind, not from the senses, but from the silent center, where all perception originates. Because once the eye fades, what remains is not emptiness, it is presence. The kind that doesn't belong to anyone, and yet belongs to everything. The silence that speaks after the self dissolves. What remains is silence. Not the absence of sound, but a vast, living stillness, the kind that hums behind everything. It is not empty, it vibrates. It carries the weight of meaning before words are born. You start to notice that every movement, every whisper, every breath arises from it. And yet, the silence itself never moves. It watches, it holds, it is. The awakened ones live inside this silence. They do not escape the noise of life. They perceive the silence beneath it. It's always there, like an ocean below the waves, patient, unchanging, infinite. When you touch it, even for an instant, something within you recognizes home. It's not a discovery. It's a remembering. Jacobo Grinbeg once wrote that perception is a dialogue between consciousness and its own creation. Silence is the space where that dialogue begins. It is where reality listens to itself. Every form, every sound, every experience is the silence speaking in disguise. And when you begin to perceive from that place, everything changes. You no longer listen to life, you listen as life. The difference vanishes. Hearing becomes being. First, it feels strange. The mind keeps trying to fill the stillness with noise, with thoughts, with movement. It's afraid of disappearing into it. But if you stay, if you breathe gently and do not run, you realize the silence is not against you. It is you. It has been waiting all along, quietly, for you to stop searching. In that realization, words lose their urgency. Time slows. Even pain softens, because it too is seen as part of the same eternal quiet. And within that quiet, love arises. Not sentimental love, but the kind that doesn't need a reason. The kind that simply is. This is why the awakened speak little. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they hear too much. They listen to the pulse of existence, the rhythm behind form. They know that truth is not in expression, but in the stillness from which expression comes. And so they walk softly, their silence speaking louder than any voice. Silence is not the end of perception. It is its beginning. It is the pure space where consciousness first opens its eyes. To perceive as the awakened do is to listen deeply, not to the world's noise, but to the eternal quiet that sings beneath it. It is the moment when perception becomes prayer and being becomes presence. The web of consciousness in silence, the world begins to weave itself again, not as matter, not as mind, but as a single breathing fabric, endless, luminous, alive. Jacobo Grinbeg called it la red de consciência, The web of consciousness is not somewhere out there. It's here, pulsing through every heartbeat, every photon of light, every thought that drifts through awareness. It is what connects all things, what allows one leaf to tremble when the wind touches another. When you begin to perceive through that web, the boundaries soften. You no longer feel like a fragment of existence, but like existence itself, momentarily aware of its own flow. You can sense the quiet intelligence in everything, in water, in stone, in air. You can feel how the universe breathes through form and emptiness alike, shaping itself into infinite mirrors of perception. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is isolated. Even pain has its thread woven into the whole. This perception is not mystical. It is intimate. It happens in the ordinary, in the unnoticed gestures of life. It's the way light bends through a window, the way someone laughs and you feel it ripple through your chest, the way silence deepens when a thought ends. Everything speaks the same language: vibration, resonance, being. You are not an observer. You are the field itself, looking at itself through countless points of view. Grinbeg believed that the human brain is not a generator of consciousness, but a translator of it, a sacred interface that transforms the infinite into the perceivable. When awakening expands, the translation becomes clearer. The distortions fade. You start perceiving the original signal, raw, unfiltered, unbroken. And you realize what you see as others are simply different frequencies of the same source, vibrating in harmony or dissonance depending on the level of awareness. To live with that understanding is to live gently. You no longer force the world. You listen to it. You walk slower. You speak with care, because you know that every word is a vibration that touches the entire web. Every thought is a movement in the collective fabric. Every act of presence ripples through eternity. The web does not end at the edges of perception. It extends into the unseen, where time folds into itself and awareness flows without direction. To perceive that is to enter a deeper kind of intimacy, not between you and the world, but between consciousness and its infinite reflection. And so, the awakened live in two realities at once, the tangible and the invisible, the moment and the eternal. They understand that both are threads of the same tapestry, woven together, inseparable, singing the same silent song, the mirror of others. Once you begin to see the web, every face becomes a reflection. It's not a separate being, not an other, but a mirror, curved just enough to remind you of your own shape. The eyes of another person are not windows. They are doorways, thresholds, where your awareness meets itself again, dressed in different stories, different voices, different dreams. You start to notice it in small moments. A stranger passing on the street, and for a heartbeat, you feel their life moving inside your own. The quiet understanding between two souls who don't need words to speak. The way someone's pain stirs a deep recognition, as if the same ache once lived in you. It is not empathy. It is unity, remembering itself. Jacobo Grinbeg wrote that the perception of others is not external. It is the self interacting with its own reflection in the lattice of consciousness. Every encounter, then, is a meeting of frequencies, two waves crossing, two lights touching, and in that contact, reality adjusts itself, a new shape, a new awareness, a new vibration. The awakened see this and respond differently. They do not rush to change others. They do not project stories onto them. They listen deeply, completely, until the illusion of separation fades and the essence beneath the person begins to shine through. They know that what they see in another is what consciousness wishes to see in itself. That love is not an emotion, but the recognition of the same light. When you perceive others through this awareness, judgment dissolves. How can you condemn what is also you? Even the darkness in someone else's eyes becomes a mirror, an invitation to see the parts of yourself that still long to be met with compassion. And so, every human interaction becomes sacred. Every conversation becomes a reflection of divine geometry. Every silence shared becomes prayer. Okay? To love, then, is not to possess or to need. It is to perceive without distortion. It is to see through the layers of history, identity, and fear into the silent field where all beings are one vibration. The awakened do not love because they want. They love because they are. Their love is the natural radiation of awareness when it no longer hides behind the illusion of I and you. The mirror of others is gentle but relentless. It will show you what remains unseen. It will ask you to forgive, to release, to remember, because through every reflection, the web keeps weaving until one day you look into the eyes of another and realize you are staring directly into the infinite. The dance of duality awakening is not an escape from opposites. It is their reconciliation. Light and shadow stop fighting and begin to move together like two halves of a single breath. What once looked like conflict becomes rhythm. Pain and peace, birth and death, silence and sound, they weave through one another, inseparable, necessary. You begin to see that reality is not built on separation, but on contrast. It needs both poles to reveal its wholeness. At first, the mind resists this truth, wants the light without the shadow, love without loss, clarity without confusion. It calls one good, the other bad, but the awakened eye sees the game differently. It understands that opposites are not enemies. They are mirrors that define one another. Without darkness, light has no meaning. Without silence, music cannot exist. Without the unknown, the known becomes hollow. Jacobo Grinbeg described consciousness as a holographic field where every point contains the totality. That means that joy holds the seed of sorrow, and sorrow hides the spark of joy. Nothing stands alone. When you perceive from this field, you stop judging experiences by their surface. You begin to see the sacred movement underneath the dance that never ends. Every fall is part of the spiral. Every loss is an opening. Every contradiction is a doorway into deeper awareness. The awakened ones do not seek to transcend duality. They move within it with grace. They understand that the play of opposites is how consciousness knows itself. Light explores darkness to remember what it is. Form dissolves into emptiness to rediscover freedom. And all of it, every flicker, every rise and fall, happens inside the same vast stillness that never moves. When you begin to live this way, life softens. You stop labeling moments as blessings or curses. You stop asking why. You start listening. You realize that even the storm has rhythm, and even chaos has music. The dance of duality is not something to master. It is something to surrender to. You let it move through you, trusting that every step, every mistake, every ache belongs to the same choreography. And in that surrender, peace is found, not as the absence of conflict, but as the quiet recognition that everything belongs. The awakened smile in the middle of both laughter and tears, because they have learned to see the hidden unity moving behind them. They understand that the divine is not found in escaping life, but in embracing its totality. Duality is the mirror where consciousness learns to love itself. To awaken is not to leave the dance, but to move within it, eyes open, heart steady, knowing that even the opposites are one. The flow of time, once a ruler, becomes a current. It no longer pulls you forward or drags you back. It simply flows through the stillness of awareness. The awakened do not chase it. They watch it pass, like light moving over water. Dim. Time is not a line, but a pulse, expanding and contracting in the eternal now. Every moment contains all moments. Every breath echoes eternity. In the beginning, this is disorienting. The mind, built on sequence, doesn't know how to exist without a before and after. It panics, searching for anchors, for dates, memories, destinations. But when perception opens, those anchors dissolve. The past is no longer a chain, the future no longer a promise. They are simply shapes the present takes as it dreams itself. And in that realization, something profound emerges, the understanding that nothing ever happens outside the now. Jacobo Grinbeg suggested that consciousness creates time as a way to perceive movement within itself. Like a dancer spinning in an endless circle, awareness invents rhythm so it can feel its own unfolding. For the dance has no start and no finish. There was never a first step. There will never be a last. The eternal turning, the infinite unfolding of one timeless pulse. When you perceive time this way, urgency fades. You stop rushing toward anything because you see that you're already inside everything. The future no longer glitters like a distant salvation. It breathes quietly within the same space as now. The past, once heavy with regret or nostalgia, becomes weightless, a reflection shimmering on the surface of being. Nothing is lost. Nothing can be. Everything simply shifts its form within the same eternal consciousness. The awakened move gently through this river. They no longer measure days. They feel them. They no longer seek meaning in milestones, but in moments. Sunrise, a breath, a heartbeat. Each is infinite when fully seen. They understand that eternity is not somewhere after death. It is woven into every second of life. To live in the flow of time is to live outside of it, rooted in presence, open to change, untouched by it. And so, time becomes art. Every moment, a brushstroke. Every silence, a color. You begin to realize that what you call your life is simply consciousness painting itself across the canvas of now. There is no rush to finish, no fear of ending, because the artist and the painting are the same. And even when the form dissolves, the beauty remains, still flowing, still creating, still eternal.